So having done a couple of videos on Hornby's Bagnall shunter, I thought it might be nice to just do a quick video talking about the other little 040 diesel shunter from the railroad range, the BR Class 6. The Class 6s were a small class, both numerically and in terms of physical size. They were introduced in 1958, built by Andrew Barclay and Sons, for use on the Scottish region of British Rail, although at least one made it south of the border to Reading. Although they were ideally suited for shunting, they were also capable of trip work, and they lasted in service until the late 1970s. One survives in preservation. Hornby and their predecessor Triang have always liked to have at least one little four-wheeled diesel shunter for their entry-level range. And all things considered, the Class 06 is a pretty decent choice, equally at home poodling around in the sidings, or you can prototypically have it running down the line with a few wagons. So, on to the model itself. Well, the most important point to bear in mind here is that it's built around the Hornby Railroad 040 chassis. The chassis predates the railroad range, but same deal. What this means is, firstly, it goes like a rocket. This kind of engine would most likely be seen crawling about the place. It was not a machine built for speed. So, while that's quite fun, it's not really prototypical. The big issue, cosmetically speaking, is that this means that a number of compromises have had to be made to get the body to fit around the chassis. It's larger than the prototype. It's kind of wider across the back, not to body shame. Incidentally, the fact that it has 3 windows indicates that this is one of the earlier batch of shunters. Later Class 6s only had 2 windows there, but that's not really relevant here. Back to stuff that's relevant. The body moulding includes these toolboxes that do not exist on the prototype. Now, I suppose you could argue this away, particularly if you're doing a freelance line saying that this particular one had toolboxes added at a later date. It's easy to come up with excuses for this sort of thing, but that is worth bearing in mind. Actually, hold on a second. Yeah, the Bagnall has a similar compromise there. The real locomotive has a jack shaft there, but this step kind of comes around and largely conceals it. I believe branch lines do a kit, or did a kit, to improve the chassis, so if you don't mind the other various problems with the model, but the chassis is really bugging you, then you could do that. Now, a point I made in my video about the Bagnall is that it doesn't have a whole lot by way of projecting detail. There's nothing that can really get snapped off by an over-enthusiastic and careless child, and lost, inhaled, ingested, injected, whatever. The Barclay is not quite so friendly in this regard. It's got the projecting horns, there's the lamp irons, it's got these separate handrails, so there is a little more that you might want to watch out for if you're giving this to a small child. But it's got this lovely die-cast footplate. It's generally fairly robust. So, final thoughts on the model. Well, it's kind of stuck between 2 poles, really, isn't it? I mean, it's not quite as child-friendly as the Bagnall, but at the same time, it's too compromised in terms of scale and detail to really work as a super detailed model. The amount of carving and detailing you'd have to do to make this a really prototypical model is so much that you might as well not bother and just go straight for the Judith Edge kit. All that being said, I kind of like it. It's quite rugged. if it's not too weird a thing to say, it's kind of cute. And I think with a bit of weathering, it'll really look the part on a micro layout, shunting a load of dirty wagons. And all in all, I think it'll make a pretty decent shed mate for the Bagnall. So, there you go. The Hornby Barclay Class 6 is not a great model, but I like it.